the speaker for us tonight. Okay? No, you can't have my secretary.
I'm Jerry and I'm Nick. That's a nice shirt. I had to say that. Anyway, I'm honored tonight to get a chance to come up and introduce to you the speaker tonight. Nikki comes to us now from North Carolina. The reason I get a chance to come up here and do this is because of program of Narcotics Anonymous and the relationship we've been able to work at over the past number of years. Sometimes I have a plan, and sometimes the higher power has a plan. My plan was to get to know Nikki. The higher power plan was to teach me how to learn to grow and to love and to care and to be a part of something that I thought was gone forever. All right? The impossible becomes possible in here. Meeting Nikki, having the relationship I have with her was part of that. So I'm not going to stand here and tell you her story, but I can tell you that she's my favorite person in the whole world, and that I love her dearly, and we're like very, very special for each other. Nikki, come on.
Ooh, I got to take off this neck wallet so I can get my Kleenex prepared. I knew that was going to happen. I'm going to cry a lot more than y'all will. Thank you, Jerry. I'm Nikki N.
Hey, Nikki. Love you, Nikki. A lot. A whole lot.
Thank you, Charles. And that's making me cry, too, because it's like home in here, y'all. Thank you to the convention committee for considering me and asking me to come do this in an area that was like the second convention I ever went to. We live in North Carolina now, but I was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I got clean in Jackson, Mississippi. And so, you know, just by way of how close we are, we did a lot of celebrating recovery here. And you know, it's just been a really cool weekend to see so many people that I haven't been able to see and reconnect with and just feel so incredibly loved. And, you know, that's what's amazing about this fellowship. The gifts of recovery have been much more than I ever imagined that they would be. And to Jerry's point, you know, about relationships, man, that's just the tip of the iceberg. So, you know, I was thinking a little bit today. I got lots of good advice from everybody all weekend about what I should and shouldn't say and how I should prepare today, especially Sean. And he was like, don't think about what you're going to, you know, don't prepare at all. But, of course, I don't listen to anything Sean says. So I was thinking a little bit today about what I would say. And I was thinking about the last time I shared my story. It's been a few months ago. Like this, I try to do H&I, you know, when I'm asked. I don't do it as regularly as I used to, but anyway, I shared my story, and I didn't share as much about my childhood as I had in previous years, and I was like, you know, why did I always feel like I had to spend so much time explaining to you all those gory details? And I think it was because one of my least favorite places to be is in a place of where you pity me. And so I felt like I would take a lot of the time telling my story about that so that you would understand who I was and where I was coming from, but that you would ultimately know that I'm not a victim, you know, that I am victorious over those circumstances. And the fact of the matter is is that, you know, I got to learn, I had to learn, I think I finally learned very painfully, you know, that vulnerable doesn't mean inappropriate, which is what I thought, you know, like, be vulnerable, that doesn't mean tell you everything. Like, no, it means to me to be in a place where I can take the way you feel about my childhood as love. That you love me and you wish that wouldn't happen. You know, you wish that it would have been different and that you don't feel sorry for me. So I'm not going to spend 20 minutes explaining how that happened. But I will tell you, I was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana many years ago, and to a single mom who was well on her way to being a very unsuccessful drug addict. And, you know, what came from that was a lot of moving around and a lot of uncertainty and several different father figures, you know, and a lot of chaos, you know. And I really realized, you know, after I got clean that I picked up a lot of really good habits and a lot of really bad habits and a lot of things that I do now that are really, you know, protection. I don't need to live like that anymore. I don't need to be under protection. I'm safe. And, you know, one of those things is kind of being on high alert, you know, because when you find yourself, as we do when we're using, but then as a child, in unsafe situations where people aren't taking care of you, you're just always on high alert. Like, I'm got to see what you're doing. I'm sizing you up. I'm figuring out what's your relationship to me, what's about to happen, what do I need to do to respond. And that's a really stressful way to live. But when you live like that for so long, you don't even know you do that anymore, you know, and it's just like your nature. And one of the good things that comes from that is you get a lot of shit done. When that's the kind of person that you are, and so people are always like, how do you have so much energy? So, you know, it's kind of like all the other defects I have and are, you know, to an extent are assets too. You know, it's like I got to turn the volume down a little bit on them, and they're actually assets for me. So sometimes one of those things that I do is I'm really not still till I'm in a meeting. I'm just running around doing life, and then I sit down in a meeting and I'm like, I'm sad or I'm scared or whatever because I'm so busy doing stuff, you know, I can't even like feel and hear what's going on. So I appreciate that about meetings and recovery. But a couple key things that I learned from my childhood that have followed me into recovery and really haven't served me well are that people who are supposed to love and care for you unconditionally are going to fail you. That was one big learning. And that when people knew who you really were, they weren't going to like you, you know, and some of that came from, you know, just how dysfunctional my family was, and you couldn't tell people about that, and, you know, I mean, to the point where, you know, social workers and lawyers might get involved if people knew what was going on, so I learned to keep secrets and not tell everybody everything, or to decide based on the situation what I would tell people, and it still to this day, I'd like to tell you that I'm cured of that, and I'm not. So, you know, what's really been neat for me is just that kind of realization that, you know, that you don't pity me, that you really love me. And the neat thing about all of the things that happened to me or that were, you know, part of my story are really about some of the literature talks about in one of the Just for Today meditations, to the extent that I can feel pain, I can feel joy. And so today I can be grateful for that happening, because like, if I hadn't had the capacity, the amount of pain that I experienced, I wouldn't be able to feel the opposite and feel that much joy, you know. So, like, I hate to break it to you, I probably felt more joy than a lot of you in here, and there's a lot of other people that felt a lot more joy than me, and that's you know, the beauty of this program. But so anyway, you know, I was living with my mom and watching her and. You know, knowing that I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I wasn't a drug addict. I was pretty clear on that. And, you know, we moved around a lot, and I had to kind of be a chameleon and try to figure out how to be okay in the school. And eventually her using led me to being in foster care. And then I'm always like really defensive about that, like, no, don't feel sorry for me. This is the good part, you know. Foster care was good, and I lived with these old people in Port Vincent who were like neighbors that we had when I was like 3, And then I was like 7 years old and I started living with them, and they really tried to undo the previous 7 years, like just loved me and took care of me and took me to church, and just sort of, moralized a little bit more than I'm a fan of, and kind of messed me up with religion. But besides that, they were amazing people. And one day I came home and my papa, he had dropped dead. And so again, I knew that the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally were going to fail you and leave you, and I remember like suddenly going to bed that night and asking my mama if I could sleep with her, and asking her if the door was locked. So in 7 years of living there, I never crossed my mind in Port Vincent, Louisiana, is the door locked? Is somebody going to get in here and get us something, going to happen? But and my papa was gone, and he was like 5'6", he wasn't doing nothing, but. No offense, James. But I just knew that he had a gun and he was going to take care of me. And then he was gone, and I remember that feeling of fear, and that didn't go away until after I got clean. It just stayed there, this little pit in my stomach. And so, I was real scared about using and kind of intimidated and just real wary of it, really. But I was also, tempted, and I would spend summers with my mom, and she didn't know how to be a parent, really. She was my friend, and so the first time I used, it was liquid drugs or whatever, I know we're just trying to throw around a bunch of drug names, but she bought it for me and my friends, and I kind of felt cool, and I was like, well, I'll just try a little bit, And the funny thing was that I didn't act like she did, so I thought that meant that I wasn't going to be a drug addict, you know what I mean? And I tried a little bit more, and then I tried a little bit more, and this and that, and the other. And honestly, I can tell you that for a lot of years it was real manageable. What wasn't manageable, so you can go was I a drug addict, or how did it work? It doesn't matter. But my story is that my first drug of choice was approval, because I needed the teachers and people to accept me and approve of me. That was my drug of choice. And then it was different various things, and none of that really went off the deep end too much. And then I decided when I was 14, my papa died, that I needed to move out on my own. Mistakes were made, I'll just say that. And 2 years later, I was pregnant, and my mama told me that I needed to get married, because that's what you do in the Deep South. You not certainly have unwed children. I think the word bastard was thrown around. I don't know. There was a lot of guilt involved, and so I ran out 2 days before I delivered that baby and got married. So, the birth certificates were right. It was really romantic. I had on a Mickey Mouse t-shirt, from Walmart, maybe some leggings. I don't even know if I had pants on, honestly, at that point. And we didn't have much money. And so anyway, I found myself, 17 with a newborn and a 5-year-old graduating high school. Mistakes were made. So, like I said, approval was one of my drugs of choice at that point, and I was addicted to it. And so, like I said, I knew, wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I didn't want to be. I knew I couldn't depend on anybody. Let's just get honest. I knew I could not depend on anybody. Nobody at this point was there to take care of me. I knew that I needed to figure out how to take care of myself, or I was going to be in trouble. So I started nursing school. It's hard for me to say that out loud when I tell my story, because for so long after I got clean the second time, I realized how much of my identity was wrapped up in being a nurse, and so I just kept that to myself. People would have to drag it out of me, what do you do? I'm like, I work at the hospital, Oh yeah, what do you do? Well, I work in orthopedics. What do you literally do? I'm a nurse, but I don't tell anybody. Because I needed to establish my identity, here as an addict and a mom and a friend and a sponsor and a sponsee, and I needed to have something that wasn't just being a nurse, because my addiction tried to take that away from me. And what would I do if that was gone? And there was nothing else there, so it was really important for me. Anyway, so, I went to nursing school, and, you know, riding that approval drug, really. I mean, I'm glad that I had that, like, it to motivate me, because, again, defects can be assets, you know, and so I finished nursing school, you know, still using pretty manageably up to that point, and also pretty miserable, you know, pretty fearful, scared. Every decision I made was based on, am I pretty enough? Am I not sweet enough? Am I fun enough? Am I going to have enough? You know, or do we have enough money from? Everything was like fear-based, you know, and then I started being a nurse, and, you know, I was like not old enough to drink, but I was old enough to medicate you. And so then, you know, I'm like naturally a little bit bossy, so then you should be in charge, you know, of everything. And I was like, so like my approval meter was like, whoa, you know. I love this place. Like, I'm good at this. And you're paying me to do this. And like, the more I do this, the more you pay me. I never want to go home. So I mean, I'd work like these insane hours and you know, be in charge and make good decisions and take care of people and make money and spend money and feel kind of good about myself, you know. And in the background, I've got like this really dysfunctional marriage that I don't like to go home to anyway. So yeah, I can pick up that shift, whatever you got. And you know, needless to say, that marriage ended up not working out. And one day my mama died, and there it was again, like another undercut of like, now there's nobody. You know, I got this mom who's just using so much that like, I can't even have my kids around her, and that was it. You know, I didn't have any sisters or brothers. You know, I didn't have a dad, so I felt really alone, like in a way that I had never felt. Like, I felt like everybody was gone, and I decided one day to take home some medicine from work, you know. It was your medicine. Let me just let me rephrase that. It was my dope, and I took it home, and I convinced myself that it was in case of emergency. You know, I was just gonna. I still have this dresser, y'all. This is so crazy. But anyway, I had this tall dresser, and it was like my underwear drawer in the top. It's not. I don't even use the dresser anymore. So it's not my underwear drawer. But anyway, I opened it, and I put the dope in there. I mean, the medicine, and then like the device that you needed to use the medicine, and put it all in there. And I'm like, you know, I might have an abscess in the middle of the night. You want to talk about justification? I might, like, what if I break my arm and I can't get to the yeah. So needless to say, like about 7 hours later, I said, I just need some sleep. I give that medicine. I know what it does. I need some sleep. If I could just get a good night's sleep, this marriage, this divorce that I'm going through, everybody being gone, it's going to be better. Like, I'm going to be able to deal with that better if I could just get one good night of sleep. And I took it, and boy, it changed my life that night, you know, because it was like something I had been looking for all those years, all 19 of them, you know. I found it, or so I thought, and I said, you know, will you marry me? Will you take everything I have? You can have it. What do you want? You want this profession? You want these kids? You want this marriage? You want all my stuff? You can have it. Just keep taking care of me. And it worked for a little while. Just like everything else, you know, the new wore off. It never felt like it did the first time ever again. And before long, I found myself with a lot of consequences, really, and the opportunity to go to rehab. And so what I mostly remember about the rehab is being like so ashamed of myself, really, because how can you approve of me and know that I'm a junkie too? Those things are like not interchangeable. So like my approval drug's gone, my drug's gone, you know, I'm just sitting in Shameville over here. And I knew when I left there I never wanted to use again, and that's what's scary about this disease. I left there and 100% of my being, every fiber in me was like, I don't care what happens, whatever you tell me I need to do, I'm going to do it. I never want to use again. And then I went to my first meeting, and I was like, God, these people are sick. You know, I don't know, you know, and I didn't know about NA at the time because the treatment center didn't tell me about it, and I was just like an idiot, just, you know, I don't know. some people just look stuff up on the internet and go to meetings. I was not that smart. So I'm going to the other fellowship, which is not why I use again, so please don't write that down. But, you know, I sit in there and I think, boy, these people are sick as hell. And I'm too young for this, and I'm different. Or I'd be like, these people know nothing about using. And if they had used like I had used, they wouldn't be able to stay clean either. So the point is that that's what I do, is decide how I'm different and special, I'm a unicorn, and anything that you say is not going to work for me. And that's what I did. So I ended up deciding that going to an hour meeting a day was too long. I had these kids that I'm trying to take care of and raise. You know, I've got to work. And I just started trying to shoot myself because I'm pretty smart. And, you know, I thought that it was too much work to go to an hour a meeting, an hour a day. I mean, then it's like 30 minutes to get there. I mean, that's 2 hours a day. I don't have that kind of time. So I just started, like, you know, reproducing signatures and whatnot, and I really still didn't think I was going to use, you know, and then I realized that, like, alcohol was a drug, but, I mean, I'm from South Louisiana. Like, how do you eat a po' boy and not drink a beer? That's kind of ridiculous. So I found a loophole there, and I was like, as long as I don't do the thing that made me go to rehab, I'm going to be okay. So I started drinking, and then it was on, you know, and I did things that time that I had never thought that I would do. And, you know, I thought I had some shame before, you know, and so anyway, I did some things, and the funny part was, by the time I got caught again, using was a full-time job. Right? I was a chemist. I would take my own urine at the hospital and send it to the lab as if it was your urine just to see if it would test positive. Because you were getting the medicine, and so even if you tested positive, it wouldn't hurt you wouldn't look bad. But I could tell if I had used 24 hours ago, would it still show up? If I used 48 hours ago, would it still show up? This is serious. There was a whole thing of keeping track of this and finding more, and what took the longest was getting it in my body. Irish people have bad veins, okay? And I'm saying all that because of the irony of me saying that going to the meeting for an hour was too much work, right? I mean, literally 16 hours a day or more was spent conniving and figuring out, signing sheets, answering calls, doing all the stuff, looking at your lab charts. Was it even you that I sent that down? I mean, you know, you start getting confused, start doing all the drugs. So, anyway, I got caught again, and you know, I don't know why some of us go to prison the first time we get caught. You know, and I wish I understood that. I don't understand that, how that works, but I had the opportunity to go to rehab again, and I was like, sign me up. Woo, boy, how did I get so lucky? I mean, I should be in prison. People now, you know, because of the opioid crisis, they get arrested at work for the same thing that I got to go back to rehab for. And anyway, so I got to go back, and I was super excited because I was like, you know, heard somebody sharing earlier about being good at being in institutions. I kind of was too, because I'm a fan of approval. What's the rule? Let me follow it so you can tell me I did a good job, right? And you want the baseboards cleaned on Tuesday? Sign me up. I'll never forget to clean the damn baseboards or whatever the thing is that you got to do. And I went because I was like, man, I missed something. I mean, I'm kind of, you know, sort of smart. Like, I must have been sleepy off all those yeast rolls y'all give us at lunch that day, and I missed something the first time I went. And now I'm going to hear the thing, and it's going to be better, and I'm not going to use again. And I sat through 9 months this time, and I didn't hear a damn thing different than the first time. So after I got over being pissed off about that, I started to believe, like, maybe, you know, I was super skeptical. I mean, I'm a little cynical by nature. I mean, you know, just like, really? Just going to a meeting, talking to people, and all the things that you guys told me I needed to do went against my core, like what I had learned as a child. Trust somebody, tell them who I am. I don't know. A girl? That doesn't sound fun. But I was so scared that I said, okay, you know what? I didn't really give it my all the first time. Was willing to admit that, but I'm ready to give it my all. So, in treatment, they were like, you can't get out till you get a sponsor. So, of course, I'm like, sign me up. Who's going to be my sponsor? And there was this woman, and she had 3 years clean, and at the time, like, that was a lot. It's still a ton of clean time, don't get me wrong, but at the time, I mean, you might as well said she had 30 years clean. I was like, in awe. 3 years clean. And so anyway, I asked her to be my sponsor, and she got right on working steps. You know, we started working steps, and what was most impactful, I think, for me about that, I had worked steps. I'd been in treatment for 9 months. I mean, I was pretty much like on my second set of steps by then. You know how they do those like robo steps, like, you know, and but anyway, I worked this first step with her, and it was like, it really struck me, man. She's like not getting paid to do this. There's nothing in it for her. You know, she's not, I'm not trying to graduate from rehab to do this step with, I mean, there's just like, she's just doing it. And, you know, it started putting insurance in here for me. Like, man, that's something new, you know. Maybe I can trust this thing. Like, maybe this really does work, you know. Hanging out with people after meetings and getting to know people and being of service, you know. So, like, getting thrown into service because, you know, I don't know if any of you guys can relate, but, like, those first couple years clean, I pretty much knew everything. I mean, once you remove the drugs, I'm like, I could be in charge of everything. Let me tell you who's chairing this meeting? That indignant thing. Have you guys done that? Like, because nobody started the meeting. You know, I don't do it anymore, but I learned my lesson. They're like, well, you are. Oh, God. So anyway, you know, I'm like GSR, alternate GSR, all that stuff, and then, you know, chair, area chair, all that, you know, stuff that you kind of get roped into doing, and you're super grateful to do, you know, because one of the other things that the literature says is our negative sense of self can be replaced by a positive concern for others. And I had nothing but a negative sense of self. Now, you might not have known it. You probably did, but you know, I didn't think much of myself, really. And for that to be removed, and not only removed, but to have the gift of caring about other people, caring about you guys, I'm so grateful for the service that I got to do in Narcotics Anonymous, the service I still get to do. Because I can tell you that it absolutely, between that and my personal recovery, has been unbelievably beneficial to me in my professional life. I have so much sympathy for you guys with the selling the hotel right out from under you. Right? I mean, man, we went through Hurricane Katrina. We were trying to run a convention, and we ended up having to be on the same convention committee for 2 years in a row. Love Bob and Pixie, but damn. No, it was great. It was a great opportunity because if you can get 100 addicts to do what you want them to do, you can pretty much dominate the universe. And that's, you know, I learned so much leadership through working with those addicts and like being of service, being the secretary, I don't even know all the different roles we did. We did everything because that's how a convention works, right? Whatever you're saying you're supposed to do, you end up having to do everything. So thank you guys for your service. And later, you know, 2 months after I got married, I ended up chairing a convention. Like, you want to talk about some stress? Buy a house. Plan a wedding, get married, and be the chair of a convention all like together. That was a lot of fun. But anyway, I started believing that I could be clean too and recover, and had the gift of this program, and you know, just started killing life, right? So when I was in rehab, they told me that I was going to have to move. I got clean. When I got clean, I lived in Biloxi, Mississippi. But I went to treatment in Jackson, and the board of nursing told me that I could not move back to the coast. They said, you know, you can't move back to the coast. And I said, you can't tell me where to live? And they said, well, we can tell you where to work. So if you're going to work, you're not moving back to the coast. So I got some acceptance and moved to Jackson, Mississippi, and I'm internally grateful for that. They were right. You know, I had done that. I had gotten out of rehab. I went back to the same place, the same job, the same everything. And it was almost like this entitlement, like, nothing really bad happened. I got the same job. I mean, everything's good. And I used again. You know, I needed to be, like, ripped up and derooted and replanted somewhere that I could be fresh. So Jackson was my home for many, many years. Fog Lifters was my home group. And, you know, I was thinking about earlier, it's like just the commitment that I had to that home group. You know, I get exhausted with people. God, I mean, there's some personalities in Narcotics Anonymous, and I am one of them. And you butt me up against some other strong personalities, and like, there's some friction in there. And but no matter what, I didn't run away from that home group. You know, I didn't go, oh, there's a sexier home group down the road, I'm gonna go check them out. And like, you just figured it out. Like, I hung in there. I love that home group. I had a hard time changing when we moved to North Carolina. I'm like, how long can I like? I'm still on their Facebook page. I ain't getting off there. But anyway, so you know, just learned so much through that, and you know, when I first got clean, the literature says there's no model for the recovering addict. Well, thank God, because I didn't do a good job about all that. But you know, one of the things it says in there is relationships can be a very painful area, and so I decided to hook up with a newcomer because, you know, I was new, so, you know, I might as well do that now so you won't judge me later if I do it after I have a bunch of clean time. So, you know, she ended up relapsing about every 6 months for 2 years, and it's a miracle I stayed clean through that. I don't recommend it. Lots of mistakes were made, and lots of really cool things happened. And so I got clean March 20th of 2002. You know, I always say it's a lot easier to be clean 17 years than it is to be clean 17 days. So give yourself a break if you're new. But so I had about let's see. So in March of 2005, I got a call from the Veterans Hospital in Biloxi, and they said my mom was not doing well. She was on a ventilator, and I needed to come down there and make some decisions. So I went down there like a good, independent, don't help me person alone. Called y'all when I was already on the way, because God, I can't let you see me like this. I can't let you see me grieving over this woman. Like, I can't let you see that. So I went by myself, and you son of a bitches came down anyway. And, you know, like, just probably the longest week of my life, we took her off the ventilator, and my mom was such a fighter. Like, she wasn't having it. She wasn't quite ready, you know. And so that Sunday, I was like, Mama, I gotta go. You know, David and Anthony, I have these two beautiful boys, and they're still in Clinton, Mississippi, right outside of Jackson, and I was like, they've got school tomorrow, I gotta go, I love you. I want you to know that I have 3 years clean today. You know, and if you're tired and you're ready to go, you know, I forgive you, I love you, and I know that you did the best that you could. But I gotta go home. And I left. And when I drove into my driveway in Clinton, about, 3-hour drive, my aunt called me and told me my mom had died. So I went to a meeting that night, and I picked up a black and gold key tag. And every year since then when I celebrate, it's a little bit bittersweet, really. Super grateful that if I keep doing what I'm doing, that my kids will never be in a position like that. I feel like it's a celebration of my recovery, and really if I had never been here in this place, I still wouldn't understand why my mom couldn't stop using. But I understand today. I wish it was different. It wasn't. And so there was lots of beautiful things that happened. So when I got clean, I was still married. I got divorced. I filed bankruptcy. So I had a court of law tell me 2 times in 2 years, you're a failure. Here's your documents to prove what a failure you are. And, it was really painful. And so I did the same thing. I went to a meeting. I shared about it. And people told me about their bankruptcy. And they told me what they had done and how, they had repaired their credit. And, you taught me how to be an adult. I didn't know anything about that. I knew some stuff. I thought I knew some stuff. I had gone to college and I was sort of self-supporting, but not really. I was, not checking the mail for 2 weeks because I didn't have any money to pay what was in there anyway. So I would just pretend I was like the lady who had Post-its all the time on the apartment thing because I wouldn't get the mail out of there. And the post office guy was like, "Can you help me out? I can't stuff anything else in this little box." I'm like, "No, there's no money. Clean, okay?" So I know all about the car title place. So anyway, I ended up getting my credit together, buying a house, and my sons got to like decorate their rooms, and that was a big deal. That's like something I didn't have. We moved around a lot. You didn't like paint your room what color you want it to. So I'm like, take them to Home Depot. I'm like, you just pick out whatever colors you want. We are about to do it up. And so one of my kids picked Ninja Red on a white wall. So 6 years later, we're still trying to get it from being pink. But every single process like that, every victory that I had, you guys were there. Addis came and helped me tear out the Brady Bunch carpet in that friggin' ranch house, and the half wall that was blonde brick and with a planter, right? He was visionless. But by the time I sold that house 5 years ago, it was beautiful. It was beautiful, and it was all because you guys came and you showed me how to put a laminate floor down, and you showed me how to put crown up, or sometimes you just put it up. And I painted it. It took the village of Narcotics Anonymous, and you guys showed up for me. You were my family, right? And you hurt my feelings sometimes, and you didn't do what I wanted you to do a lot of the time. And I'm grateful for it, because I don't always know what I need. So anyway, I made a lot of mistakes, and I made a lot of mistakes in relationships, and then, I guess when I had about 5 years clean or so, there was this guy that had 2 years clean, and I didn't like him, and he didn't like me. He thought I was a B, and I thought he was a, like, no shoes wearing, poetry reading, like, hippie. I'm not a fan, and we fell madly in love with each other. And we changed each other, and it was beautiful. And like, I grew really fast, and he kept up, man. And then he grew really fast, and I was like, oh my God, I gotta grow, because otherwise we're gonna grow apart. And we've been doing that ever since, and we just celebrate 10 years married. Last week, and what I love about that, I was in a meeting, I think last week, and I have a new home group, and they read the Live and Clean a lot, and I read something in there that says we begin to move toward what we want rather than just away from what we fear. And I sent him a picture of it. I do that all the time. I'll respond in here like, oh God, I read something like, oh, let me send it, because I'm like, if I don't do it right now, I'm not ever going to think of it again, And I sent it to him, and I was like, that's what he's been telling me for years. He's been telling, but you can't hear it until you're ready. Like, I don't want to just, when I got here, I wanted to die, but I was too afraid. So it wasn't because I wanted to live, I was just too afraid to die, right? It's not because I want to do something, it's because I'm scared. I excel at work because I'm scared I won't have enough, not because I want to impact a lot of people and do good work, right? And that's what I want to change. It's like that's been an awakening for me in the last couple of years, is how much fear-based life I'm still living, and I'm over it. And so some of the stuff that's happened in this last year, 2 years, I guess, so he's got big dreams, man, and he's running towards them, and I'm running to keep up. And, one of the things that happened before I got clean, and not because I was using, but because I was scared. I had an abortion when I was 19. I was married, and I was finishing up nursing school, and it was a moment in my life where it was like, it's that baby or it's me. Because if I have another baby, I'm not going to finish school, and I'm not going to be able to take care of myself, and it's not going to be okay. And so I had an abortion. It was at a Louisiana Regional Convention that I finally said that out loud to somebody in recovery, that I had done that. I was so full of shame. I drove myself there. I lied and told them there was somebody to take me home. I took myself home. Nobody ever knew. That never came out of my mouth. And so I always said I didn't want to have any kids. But what I really meant was, I don't deserve to have any more kids. And And, you know, because of this program and a lot of, like, work, I forgave myself. And he said, will you marry me? And I said, yeah. Hell yeah. I was about to ask you. And then he said, will you change your last name? I was like, man, you're kind of pushing it. I got these kids, I don't want to be the lady with all the different names, kids, different names and stuff. Because of the fear that I have of what's PTA going to think if my name's different? And I said, okay, I will do that. And then he said, will you have my baby? And I had to, like, get in that place of, like, do I deserve to do that? You know, do I deserve to have a baby after what I did? And I said, yes, I will. And I'm so glad. I have a beautiful little girl. She's 8. My kids are 14 years apart. I don't recommend it. So I have this 28-year-old stepson who's amazing. I have a 23-year-old and an 8-year-old, and she's just a joy, you know. And so, like those, I always say I have 2 batches of kids, right? Because I have these grown-ups, I have this 8-year-old, and my sons came to meetings with me. I mean, there wasn't nowhere else for them to go. You know, Granny's a drug addict, and like their daddies moved to Florida, you know, so they came to meetings with me. They went to functions. They loved recovery on the river. They knew all about recovery. And so I guess, you know, I sat in this place of like, you know, I don't know, comfort that they weren't going to end up like me. And that middle one sure has. And he called me a couple months ago from jail in Mississippi, and he's, you know, picked up a felony. And I'm just, you know, I think that's probably the most powerless I've ever felt. Just to be 10 hours away, and even if I was here, just nothing that I can do, you know. So I came, we had a friend that had his mom died, so we came down to see that, and I went over there and just asked him if he wanted some help, and he's just not ready, and it's really hard to watch, you know, to watch he's like a mirror image of me, and just watching him on those railroad tracks, and like screaming like, get off, the train's coming, you know, and they just like, la-da-da, you know. So it's been hard, but so anyway, chasing those dreams, we moved to North Carolina, and it's been amazing. You know, we've gotten 2 master's degrees, we've sold a house, we bought a house, we moved 4 times, no stress involved in any of that, and, you know, started a new job. My husband chased his professional dreams, started a private practice, no stress in that, and you know, when I first got to North Carolina, it was like a relief, you know, to be the person with the least amount of clean time in a meeting with, you know, 13, 14 years at the time, was like, whoa, good. They're not going to expect me to know everything, you know, like I'm just going to fly under the radar, I'm just going to take care of my recovery, but I'm not going to be responsible for stuff. I'm not going to have to throw baby showers and weddings and, you know, do all the stuff. And it was like really a relief for a little while, and then it was really, really lonely. Because I didn't do work to like build a network there, because when you have a fair amount of clean time, my experience has been like people don't surround you like they do when you're a newcomer, you know, and they shouldn't, right? And I was like, I don't know what I thought it was going to be, but it was really, really lonely and hard, and it's been a lot harder to establish relationships there than I thought it was going to be. And but I've been working on it, and so a couple years ago I decided that you know, I've had just so much to be grateful for. So I was watching the interview, and I sent it to some of my sponsors. Not all of them have watched it yet. Stephen Colbert had gotten interviewed about the death of his father in a plane crash, and he said, you know, and when you're going to be grateful for life, you have to be grateful for all parts of it, even what's painful and bad. And I thought, I couldn't have said it any better. It was beautiful. And, you know, one of the things that I'm grateful for is, like, I didn't have like a biological father in my life, but I've had several opportunities to have father figures. My papa, the foster father that raised me that died suddenly when I was 14, he was an amazing father figure to me until he was gone, you know. And then when I got clean, we came down here to a dance, and I danced with Jerry, and I think he was probably had inappropriate intentions, and then I was like, he said something, and I said, well, he said something about how long he'd been clean. I was like, oh, well, I was 3. Then he was like, oh, you know, and it set us on a course for like a different kind of relationship that's been beautiful. And so when we were planning our wedding, you know, I did all this thing. I used to say, like, I don't like flowers, they're a waste of money. Like, no, I don't want to say I like flowers, because what if nobody ever sends me any? You know, and I don't want to have a fancy wedding, because what if nobody wants to marry me? And, you know, when I thought about planning a wedding, it's kind of stressful, because it gets right into your family issues, right? Who's going to be there? You know, who's going to walk you down the aisle? And Jerry is who walked me down the aisle, you know, and, we got to do all the stuff, you know, we got to take him to PF Chang's and, like, show him the ultrasound when we were pregnant with Bella, and, like, watch him cry, you know, and have people in the restaurant, like, randomly, like, I don't know what's going on, but this is amazing. And it was, you know, and that's, like, some joy when, like, strangers can see the amount of joy that you have, and they can, like, be grateful for that. That's when you got some joy. And so I've been kicking around, like, this whole biological, you know, father thing for many, many years, like, I don't care, and then a couple years ago, I was like, I kind of want to know. I just want to know, like, is this person in the same, like, for my kids, like, my family, I just want to know genetically, I want to know. And I was finally, like, I guess mature enough to know. And so I did the whole ancestry DNA, and I won't belabor you all the details, but I found this person. And it was interesting, a little bit of, like, closure, but hugely not closure too. But like now I kind of know that this person's alive. I understand a little bit more, and long story short, like to suddenly not be an only child and know that you have 3 brothers that you've never met, like that's a weird place to be in. And so anyway, you know, we kind of talked about meeting and stuff, and then his wife started acting kind of crazy, which was interesting because he didn't even meet his wife till I was already like 4. So there's nothing, you know, my mom they weren't like doing anything behind his wife's back or anything. But anyway, long story short, you know, he was a coward when my mom told him she was pregnant, and he's still a coward. So we had not had any contact in about 1.5 years. And there we go again with that. The people who are supposed to show up and love you the most are not going to do it. And, you know, the fact of the matter is I just had to go through that. You know, I just had to feel it, and I had to feel rejected, and then at the end of the day I had to say, like, man, it's your loss. It's your loss, because not only would you know me, you would know my beautiful children, my husband, and all of you guys. Like, because I have a family, you know. And this past couple of years too, I'm like trying to build these relationships in North Carolina with women that I hadn't done a good job of doing. Part of the reason why is because my best friend was living there, and she was in recovery, you know, and it was like she's really introverted, and so, you know, she didn't want to go out to eat with people. Like, I'm like, let's go eat. And what are you doing? You want to go? Let's, you know, like, to me, the more the merrier, and that's not how she liked to do. So I found myself in a place like, oh, well, you know, if she's going to, like, you know, just really narrow, and I was just holding space for her, and when she had time, and me and her would go hike, or me and her would do something, and then, you know, she just decided she wasn't an addict anymore. And that's okay. You know, I've been clean long enough, like, that happens. I'm not here to say whether you're an addict or not. But what really happened was I realized she just wasn't a very good friend to me. You know, she was lying to me, and she just wasn't holding up her end of it, you know. And like I said, that living clean, you know, moving towards what I want. And that's not what I want in a friend. So I was like, I got to man up and tell this person, you know. It's really hard for me to do because I loved her, I didn't want to hurt her, and I told her, and she kind of worked on it a little bit, And then she sent me an email and broke up with me. And this is somebody that I've had a relationship with in recovery for almost 16 years. She was in my wedding. You know, Ed's dad died, and they drove down to see us. Like, that's, I mean, friend, you know. And I'm having to work steps on her. And I never have had that before. You know, I've never had anything in recovery that I had to work 8-step on. It's always just been sort of all-encompassing. It's been really hard, you know, to walk through that amount of pain and rejection in a couple of years has been probably the hardest thing, you know, and layer in a little bit of, you know, your child being in jail. Like, God, what else is there here? Whew. So she working these steps, and I've been meeting with my sponsor and getting a lot of relief, honestly. Nothing magical's happened, but sometimes just like pain shared the same lesson, you know. And I met with my sponsor this week, Tuesday or Wednesday, and she's like, how's it going? And I'm like, I feel good. And, you know, we went over my second step based on this relationship and like how, you know, coming to believe and what I was doing with that. And I told her that I had decided to take her off my social media, you know, because I'm like, you can't even, you know, like, I deserve better than that. If you can't even have a conversation with me, you're going to send me an email. You don't need to see my pictures. You don't need to see what I'm up to. I'm going to stop all that. It's just nonsense. Not out of an angry place, but just out of, like, it's what it is right now. And she's like, well, okay, good. So we talked about that. And so I got home. I'm letting y'all know how crazy I am, and I'm about to wrap it up. So I started thinking about how I had taken her off Facebook, and then so I decided to look up her Facebook, because, you know... Because I was like, you know, she's really private, so I was like, I bet you it's ratcheted down, there's nothing you can see, but I could see everything. And I scrolled through it, and I could see that almost every other post I was tagged in, every picture, every profile picture she had, I took that picture. I love taking pictures, by the way. And it broke my heart all over again, you know, and I came across this video she tagged me in just 2 years ago. And it was Oprah Winfrey talking about her relationship with Gail, you know. And she was like, you're my Gail. And now all I get is an email. And I got to call my sponsor about that. So, needless to say, I shut that right down. Got off Facebook. I shouldn't, you know, there's been a couple times in my life I've dug around in Facebook and regretted it. And that was one. But the most amazing things have happened to me in recovery. It's been so incredibly beautiful. The relationships that I've made in here, the family that's been replaced, you know, that I never even realized that I missed. You know, people like Jerry, there's so many. I'm not even going to start calling names because I'm just going to hurt somebody's feelings, because you guys are, there's so many of you in here, like, that have driven from other states and, you know, to be here for me, to show up for me, to care about me. Unconditionally. Well, you're not all unconditional, but there's enough to make up for the shitty blood family, right? And you know, I just want to say that I'm eternally grateful. And you know, if you're new here, the sky's the limit. I was in rehab trying to find a job as a nurse. Nobody wanted to hire me because I had gotten fired for passing out in a patient's room. That's not even why they didn't want to hire me. They didn't want to hire me because I couldn't get narcotics. Because, you know, what do they say? If you go to the barber enough, you're going to get your hair cut. Well, they were smart enough to not let you go straight out of rehab and start giving medication again. So they kept telling me to come back when I could give narcotics. And I became acutely aware of how little I was worth at that point. And I finally got a job as a nurse, and this was in 2002. And I said, man, you know, God, if you ever see fit to give me another job, any job, I'm going to do a better job. I'm going to show up. I'm going to give it all I got. And I did, and I've been doing it ever since. And so anyway, 17 years ago, I got fired for passing out in a patient room. Not my best day. And I want to tell you, as hard as it is to say this out loud, and not egotistically, because it's really incredibly difficult to tell you, that today I'm the chief nursing officer for 600 physician offices on the East Coast. to. If you wanna wear a princess dress at a wedding, giddy up. Anything you want to. Just for today, don't use. Love y'all.